Married to Clyde when she was 22 and he was 32, for 3 years of marriage, he showered her with endless tenderness, giving her everything she desired, plucking stars if she asked for stars, fetching the moon if she wished for the moon, cherishing her like a priceless treasure, except for his insatiable demands every midnight, when her tearful pleas for mercy were met only with his low laughter and refusal to relent. She knew the man possessed vast wealth and boundless love, all devoted to her. Until the day her father passed away, when she called him 99 times, each call he hung up without answer. The next second, she received a photo from her best friend. "Sarah, is this your uncle? I saw him hugging a woman on the streets of Paris." Upon opening the photo and seeing the man and woman, she felt as if she had fallen into an icy abyss. The man was him, and the woman was her aunt. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Sarah's dad passed away 3 days before Clyde returned home. As soon as he pushed open the door, he saw Sarah on the sofa, her eyes weary and red, her figure frail and alone. His guilt reached its peak, and he quickly stepped forward to embrace her. "Sarah, I had to fly to Paris for a last-minute meeting, because of the time difference. I missed your calls and couldn't be there for the funeral. It's my fault. Whatever you want as compensation, I'll make it up to you." "Okay." Sarah listened quietly to his explanation, her face as still as a stagnant pond, showing no ripple of emotion. She said nothing, simply pulling 2 documents from her bag, opening them to the last page, and handing them to him. "Uncle, I want these 2 things, sign them," she said. Clyde let out a sigh of relief and quickly picked up a pen to sign his name on the documents. Seeing his immediate action without hesitation, Sarah's eyes reddened. "You didn't even look. Aren't you afraid what I'm asking you to give might be very expensive?" Clyde helplessly held her in his arms. "Sarah, we're husband and wife. What's mine is naturally yours, and after the baby is born, it will belong to both you and the baby. You can have anything you want, understand?" As he spoke, he leaned down to listen to the movements of the baby in her belly. "Is today the day for the prenatal checkup? Is the baby being active? Shall I go with you?" Sarah remained silent, neither agreeing nor refusing. Clyde took her silence as consent and helped her into the car. The atmosphere in the carriage was heavy all the way. With no one speaking, Clyde wanted to start a conversation, but his phone suddenly rang. "Clyde, I'm back in the country and want to see you." Because they were sitting close, Sarah could clearly hear Sylvia's voice on the other end of the call. Her hand clenched involuntarily, and the next second, she saw Clyde hang up the phone. "Sarah, I have some work to handle. Can you go to the prenatal checkup by yourself?" Sarah did not expose his lie and opened the car door. In the bleak, cold wind, she hailed a taxi, and memories flooded her mind along with the fleeting street scenes outside the window. A few years ago, Sarah was involved in a car accident. The driver fled the scene, and bystanders, afraid of getting involved, hesitated to help her. As she lay in a pool of blood, barely clinging to life, it was Clyde, passing by, who lifted her up as if sent by heaven. That day, she fell in love at first sight with this man who was 10 years her senior. Fortunately, the mature and steady Clyde also liked her. After dating for a year, the two entered the hall of marriage. Perhaps because he was older, he seemed to have endless patience. After marriage, they never had a single argument, and he never missed a gift or anniversary for her. In life, he always cared about her feelings, except in bed. She couldn't understand why. At 30, his stamina was still so relentless. Many nights, she would sob and beg him to stop, but he would only laugh and kiss her over and over. "My silly little fool, I love you, that's why I'm like this. The more we do it, my baby, the sooner you'll give me a little one." Finally, in the 3rd year, she became pregnant. 3 days ago, Sarah's dad suddenly suffered a cerebral infarction. She rushed over, only to hear her father repeatedly murmuring about Clyde, asking when he would come, wanting to see this son-in-law one last time. Everyone knew he wanted to entrust his daughter to Clyde at the end of his life, and they all helped to reach out. But despite everyone's best efforts, Sarah even crashed her phone from trying so much. Yet no one could get through. Sarah's dad passed away with regret and unwillingness. Sarah had thought he was busy. Just as she finished handling her father's funeral arrangements, she received that photo from her best friend. She couldn't understand why her husband was embracing her younger aunt. Her mind was in complete chaos as she finally mustered the courage to step into Clyde's study, a place he had never allowed her to enter. The moment the door opened, she felt as if she had plunged into an icy abyss, for inside lay nothing but items related to her aunt. Covering the walls were photographs, carefully preserved love letters, countless ungiven gifts, and a thick, ongoing diary of love. Through this diary, Sarah learned everything. In his entire life, he had only been in love twice. One was her, the other was her aunt, Sylvia. They were a campus couple, and their relationship with her lasted a full decade, passionate and intense. At the height of their love, he accompanied her across the Atlantic, took her through the Amazon rainforest, and held her close for intimate kisses under the snow-capped mountains bathed in golden sunlight. At the peak of their hatred, he smashed hundreds of millions worth of jewelry for her, swallowed his pride to chase her abroad after their breakup, and even drank himself to the point of stomach bleeding upon learning she had started a new relationship. All the joys and sorrows of his early life seemed to revolve around Sylvia. The reason he was with her was simply because, after breaking up with her, he wanted to find a replacement who resembled Sylvia, so he set his sights on her niece. After all, her face was strikingly similar to her aunt's, so he orchestrated a hit-and-run accident to make her fall in love with him at first sight. So he worked tirelessly day and night on her, just to get her pregnant. But it wasn't that she wanted a child like her own, she wanted one like Sylvia's. The moment she learned the truth, Sarah felt as if struck by lightning, utterly devastated. The pain was fake, the love was fake, even the sincerity, it was all a lie. He had deceived her completely. Though she was young, she understood that one must cleanse their heart before making room for someone new. Moreover, she was never anyone's substitute. She was Sarah, the one and only Sarah, yet from the very moment they met, he had been deceiving her, so, in the spirit of reciprocity, she deceived him once too. Just now, she deliberately didn't tell him that what he had just signed, one was a divorce agreement, and the other, an abortion report. She is no one's substitute. She won't settle for a man who doesn't have her in his heart. Sarah walked into the hospital and directly handed the abortion consent form to the attending physician. "Hello, I want to terminate this pregnancy." 3 hours later, Sarah returned home. Holding her lower abdomen, after a day's rest, she looked at her pale face in the mirror and tremblingly picked up the lipstick. After applying some simple makeup, her complexion returned to normal, but she was still sweating profusely from the pain. Wrapped in a blanket on the sofa, she called for the butler, sort out all the jewelry and handbags in the display case and send them to the auction house. Donate the proceeds to impoverished mountain areas. Just as he pushed the door open and entered, Clyde heard this and froze instantly. "Sarah, why are you suddenly selling all these things?" Sarah lowered her eyes, avoiding his gaze. "If I don't like them, I'll donate them. Consider it accumulating blessings for the child." Fortunately, Clyde didn't overthink it. He walked over and hugged her, whispering soothingly, "That's fine. In a couple of days, I'll take you to an auction. You can pick out some things you like, and we'll slowly refill the emptied display cabinets." "Okay." Hearing his tone as if coaxing a child, Sarah didn't respond but changed the subject instead. "Are you done with your work?" "I'm done with work. I know you've been working hard lately. How about I stay home with you and the baby for the next week?" As he spoke, he reached out to touch the baby, but Sarah quickly stopped his hand. He looked down and noticed her stomach seemed a bit slimmer, slightly furrowing his brows. Just as he was about to ask, Sarah's phone suddenly rang. Seeing the words "uncle" on the screen, she pressed the answer button. "Sarah, your aunt returned from abroad yesterday. We're planning to gather at the old house for a meal. Will you come back? I'm not feeling well, so I won't go." Before she could finish her sentence, her phone was taken by Clyde. "I'll bring Sarah there on time." Watching him eagerly agree to the dinner gathering, Sarah felt a pang in her chest. She couldn't help but recall the day her father passed away, the 99 calls she couldn't get through. So this is how he acts when he truly likes someone, seizing every chance to meet. He didn't consider her wishes, nor did he care about the pain of her recent loss. Just follow your heart to love, to move forward. After hanging up the phone, Clyde saw the expression on her face and realized he had just lost his composure. He held her cold hand and explained, "Sarah, I know you're feeling down, but you're still carrying a child. You can't drown in sorrow. I'll accompany you back to the old house to see the family and relax a bit." Sarah pursed her lips and said nothing. At 7 o'clock sharp, the couple arrived at the old house on time. Before entering, Clyde handed a gift to Sarah, saying, "I heard from your uncle that you haven't seen your aunt in years. It's only proper to be courteous." In the past, Sarah would have found his thoughtfulness endearing, but now, she knew he was merely using her as a means to deliver a gift to the one he truly cared for. She didn't expose his thoughts and stepped into the lively hall. Hearing the sound, Sylvia, who was chatting with someone, turned her head and saw Sarah, as well as Clyde holding her hand beside her. She froze for a moment before hesitantly asking, "Sarah, who is this?" Sarah didn't answer, nor did she know how to answer. Clyde remained silent. While the relatives nearby enthusiastically introduced him, "Sylvia, you've been abroad for 3 years and didn't come back for the wedding, so it's normal you don't recognize him. This is Sarah's husband, Clyde, the CEO of S Corporation." Sylvia swayed slightly, a flash of shock crossing her eyes, but having experienced big scenes before, she quickly regained her composure and stepped forward to shake hands. The two exchanged polite greetings as if meeting for the first time. Only Sarah could perceive the intangible, flowing subtle aura around them. She handed the gift to Sylvia and simply said, "Auntie, welcome back." "No, I'm just back in the country for a month, then returning to Paris." Clyde's expression visibly darkened. Sylvia pretended not to notice and smiled as she unwrapped the gift. When she saw the dazzling gemstone necklace, admiration flashed in her eyes. "Sarah, you have excellent taste. I've had my eye on this necklace for a long time." Sarah took in both of their expressions with a calm tone. "It was Uncle who picked it. His taste has always been impeccable." During the meal, Clyde hardly ate anything, either drinking or busy serving Sarah dishes. Relatives and friends who saw this couldn't help but smile knowingly and started teasing them. "Sarah is so lucky to have married such a good husband. Look at how affectionate they are." Sarah forced a smile, looking at the beef and lamb in her bowl without touching her chopsticks. After becoming pregnant, she suffered from severe nausea and couldn't tolerate any meat or fish. Clyde knew this and accompanied her in eating vegetarian meals for a month, but today, he completely forgot about it, because he was busy rearranging the dishes, trying to place all the fish and shrimp on the table in front of Sylvia. Her aunt has loved seafood since she was a child. After finishing the meal, Clyde was also completely drunk. Relatives and friends were worried about letting them go back like this, so they insisted they stay. Sarah called the servants to help him back to his room. After washing up, she turned off the bedroom light, leaving only the bedside lamp on. Before long, Clyde groggily opened his eyes, reached out, and pulled her into his arms. "Sylvia, you came back for me, didn't you?" Sarah stiffened, not telling him he'd mistaken her for someone else. It took her a long moment before she could counter. "And you, who did you get drunk for today?" "It's you, Sylvia, it can only be you, don't you understand?" Although she had anticipated the outcome, hearing it firsthand, Sarah felt an unbearable pain in her heart. Only then did she understand why those who drown their sorrows in alcohol would act completely sober in front of her. Was it because they were afraid of revealing their true feelings when drunk, just like today, afraid of being discovered by her? She clenched her hands tightly, unable to catch her breath, and could only break free from his embrace. After sitting in the bathroom for 2 hours, Sarah finally calmed down. When she came out again, Clyde on the bed was gone. Sarah pulled open the bedroom door and saw the motion sensor light on the balcony go out. She quietly walked over and, through the window, saw Clyde and Sylvia standing outside. The night concealed the expression on his face, but his suppressed voice was clearly audible. "Didn't you tell me yesterday you weren't returning to Europe? Why have you changed your mind today? And what about you? Why didn't you tell me you married Sarah?" Hearing Sylvia's calm tone, Clyde only felt the fire in his heart burning fiercer. The last remnants of his rationality collapsed instantly as he tightly gripped Sylvia's hand. "Why did I marry her? Shouldn't you know best? She looks so much like you. She's even your blood relative. Only by being with her can I see you openly. Instead of having to fly to Paris alone and wait downstairs for dozens of hours just to catch a glimpse of you in secret, like I did a few days ago." So, he went to Paris for Sylvia, which is why he didn't answer a single call. Sarah's heart trembled violently, her fingers digging deeply into her palms. Sylvia also hadn't expected him to truly intend this, murmuring, "You're insane." "I am insane. From the day you insisted on breaking up with me, I've been insane, didn't you know? I want you by my side, even if it's just a substitute that resembles you. Enough for me to cherish for the rest of my life." His tone, filled with unvented pain, left Sylvia frozen in place. After a long silence, she finally forced out a sentence from her throat, equally pained. "Clyde, what do you take Sarah for? It's been 3 years of marriage, and she even has your child. Haven't you ever felt anything for her?" Clyde laughed instantly. "Sylvia, she's just a substitute. How do you expect me to feel anything? Even if I did, it's only because I see your face in hers. All I can think about is you." Hearing all this, Sarah felt a chill run through her body and could no longer hold back her tears. She closed her eyes, recalling his insatiable desire in bed after their marriage and his overly anxious attitude during her pregnancy. Biting her lip hard, she swallowed back those cries of despair, the last ounce of strength drained from her body, leaning against the wall. She turned away with unsteady steps, the sound of their argument gradually faded. Before the bedroom door closed, she heard Sylvia say, "Aren't you afraid Sarah will find out the truth?" Clyde replied, "She'll never know, and even if she did. She loves me so much she'd never leave." Would she really never leave? Sarah touched her flat belly, a bitter smile curling at the corners of her lips. She will. She would personally shatter the cage he had built and soar toward the freedom of the skies. Never to look back again. That night, Clyde never returned. At dawn, Sarah got up. Without disturbing anyone, she went home alone and completed the immigration procedures with her documents. Just as she finished, she received a call from Sylvia. "Sarah, can you accompany me to the cemetery today? I want to pay respects to your father and also visit my sister's grave." Because Sarah's mother passed away early, she had little contact with her maternal grandmother's side of the family. Although there was only a 5-year age gap between her and Sylvia, they weren't particularly close. However, since Sylvia was going to pay respects to her parents, Sarah had no choice but to agree. She bought a bouquet of flowers and had just arrived at the cemetery entrance when she spotted a sports car parked not far away. "It's Clyde." He also saw her and immediately got out of the car to approach her. "Why didn't you let me accompany you to visit the grave?" Sarah stared at him intently. "Didn't you leave in the middle of the night?" "Uncle, I never mentioned coming to visit the grave." "How did you know I'd be here?" Clyde took her hand proactively. "My stomach was bothering me last night. I saw you were in the bathroom, so I went to the hospital alone. This morning when I returned, Auntie mentioned wanting to come pay respects with you, so I tagged along." What a nearly perfect lie. She hummed in acknowledgement and said nothing more. When they arrived at the cemetery and saw the two tombstones standing side by side, Sarah felt a surge of bitterness in her heart. The two people who loved her most in this world had also left, seeing the tears welling up in her eyes. Sylvia walked over and gently patted her shoulder. "Sarah, even though your parents are no longer here, you still have Clyde. He will take care of you for the rest of your life, and your child is about to be born. You will have a new family." She spoke with such conviction, as if she had already decided for Clyde that their marriage would last forever. After she finished speaking, Clyde quickly responded as well, "Yes, I will take good care of you and the child, don't be sad." Hearing his words, Sarah could only feel the irony. He promised to take care of her for a lifetime, not out of love, nor out of duty, but for another woman, and his own unspeakable selfish motives. Sarah swallowed those emotions and looked up at the photo of her parents. "Yes, I will definitely have a new home. It's just that it will have nothing to do with Clyde anymore." After the memorial service, a light rain began to fall from the sky. Sylvia and Sarah sat in the back seat, while Clyde drove the car. Finding the atmosphere in the car stifling, Sylvia initiated a conversation. "I heard a new Western restaurant opened in the southern part of the city. How about we try it for lunch?" Clyde immediately changed direction. "They say the owner is Italian, and the Western food there is quite authentic." "Really? The pizza I had in Paris." The two of them chatted like this, moving from Western cuisine to Nordic culture, and then to their recent experiences. No matter what one says, the other can quickly pick it up, never letting the atmosphere turn awkward. They're so in sync, like a couple who've been together for years, sharing everything without reservation. As this thought flashed through her mind, Sarah smiled self-deprecatingly. They have indeed been together for many years, the places they've visited together, the things they've done for each other, and their deep familiarity with one another, far from what her substitute could compare to. Upon arriving at the restaurant, Clyde habitually handed the menu to Sylvia. She took it and was about to open it when she remembered something, then passed it to Sarah. Pregnant women must have many dietary restrictions. "Sarah, you order." Sarah casually ordered a few dishes, but when the food arrived, Clyde frowned. "You can't eat any of these. Have you forgotten the doctor's advice?" Sylvia also turned to look at her belly, a hint of surprise flashing in her eyes. "Sarah, aren't you 4 months pregnant? Why does your belly not seem to match that stage?" Clyde immediately stood up, wanting to take a closer look, but accidentally bumped into a waiter who was serving dishes. The dining cart was overturned, spilling all the dishes inside. Instinctively, he shielded Sylvia from the splattering sauces and cold dishes. Sarah wasn't so fortunate. The freshly prepared hot soup splashed onto her legs, instantly raising blisters. Her face contorted in pain, her forehead dripping with cold sweat. Hot air surged upwards as she clutched the tablecloth tightly. Watching Clyde carry Sylvia away in a hurry, in an instant, Sarah's heart sank to the depths. The scene descended into chaos as the waitstaff quickly helped her to a safe area. As soon as she stepped out, she saw Sylvia and Clyde arguing. "I said I'm fine. You should go back and take care of Sarah now. Your hand is red from the burn. Why must you be so stubborn? Let me take you to the hospital first, then I'll come back to get her." "Sylvia, why do you have to be so headstrong? You were so worried about me earlier. Afraid I'd get burned too. Doesn't that mean you still care about me? So what if I do, and so what if I don't?" "Clyde, we've already broken up. You've married Sarah, and she's carrying your child." Hearing Sylvia utter these words in agonized screams, Clyde's eyes instantly reddened. "You clearly know that in my heart, she could never be as important as you." Sylvia froze for a few seconds, just as she was about to speak. She looked up and saw Sarah at the doorway. Her pupils suddenly contracted, her voice carrying an unprecedented panic. "Sarah, how did you get out?" Clyde's heart skipped a beat as he turned sharply, only to see Sarah collapse unconscious, her face deathly pale. He immediately turned and rushed toward her, scooping her up and heading straight for the hospital. Amidst the clamor, Sarah forced her eyes open through the pain and saw Clyde giving instructions to the doctor. "My wife is pregnant, 4 months along. Be careful with the medication you use." After being wheeled into the treatment room, the nurse lifted her shirt, saw the flat abdomen, and gasped, "4 months? Are you mistaken? This looks like no pregnancy at all," while doubting. She turned around to double-check. Sarah stopped her despite the pain. "Nurse, I've lost my baby. Please keep it a secret. I want to tell my husband myself, though unsure of the reason. Since a miscarriage isn't good news for any couple, the nurse respected her wish. Without anesthesia, while cleaning and dressing the wound, Sarah was in such agony she nearly passed out. The burning sensation from the wound tugged at her nerves, making even breathing excruciatingly difficult. She was drenched in sweat, and every passing second felt like an eternity of torment. After the medication was applied, Sarah was taken to the ward. Clyde stayed by her bedside, repeatedly apologizing. "Sarah, why didn't you call me when you got burned so badly?" Sarah, her overbite made her teeth ache with sourness, and she felt as if a fire were burning in her legs. Her entire body temperature was rising, and she could barely squeeze out a sentence. "You're walking too fast, it's my fault." "I'm sorry." Clyde, the guilt in his eyes deepened as he slipped his hand into Sarah's tightly clenched palm. Sharp nails scratched the back of his hand, drawing blood. She watched as the droplets of blood mingled together, her consciousness growing increasingly hazy until she unknowingly fell asleep. When she woke again, it was already deep into the night. Sarah groggily opened her eyes and saw Sylvia's retreating figure. "You got burned too. Go tend to your wounds now. I'll take care of Sarah." "No, I'm afraid she'll feel upset if she wakes up and doesn't see me. I'll deal with it tomorrow." Sylvia's voice suddenly rose several pitches higher. "I said go now. Clyde, don't joke about your own health." Hearing this, Clyde's furrowed brows instantly relaxed. He grabbed Sylvia's hand. "Sylvia, don't deny it anymore. I've always been in your heart, haven't I? Just admit it, and I'll abandon everything immediately. Let's get back together, okay?" Sylvia also realized she had spoken out of turn and quickly withdrew her hand. Seeing her flustered expression, Clyde couldn't help but laugh. "All right, I won't push you. I have plenty of time to wait for you to come around. I'll listen to you and go tend to my wounds now." With that, he walked away with light steps. After 3 years together, in Sarah's memory, Clyde was always the dominant one who controlled everything, no matter how angry she got or how big a joke she played. He would always coax her like a child. He was perpetually rational, steady, mature, and composed, as if wearing a mask, never revealing his true self. She thought it was just his nature. Little did she know that even he could lose control of his emotions. He would lose his temper at Sylvia's cold words, be overjoyed at the slightest hint of her concern, and obey his beloved unconditionally like a love-struck teenager. Sarah had never seen this side of Clyde before, so she stared in a daze. And when she snapped out of it, she met Sylvia's gaze. Sarah noticed the fleeting panic in her eyes and spoke first. "Auntie, where's Clyde?" Seeing that she seemed unaware of the earlier conversation, Sylvia relaxed slightly. "He went to tend to his wounds. If you're feeling unwell anywhere, just tell me." The searing pain still tormented Sarah, but she endured it and shook her head. "I'm fine, you should go rest." Sylvia didn't leave, instead pouring a glass of water for her. After exchanging a few more words of concern, she asked Sarah a question. "Sarah, did you hear anything before you fainted yesterday?" Sarah paused with the water glass in hand, meeting the probing gaze frankly. "I didn't hear anything." She told the lie without batting an eye. It was both to dispel Sylvia's suspicions, and also to remind herself to forget those words. After all, she was about to vanish completely from their lives, after staying in the hospital for 10 days. Sarah's wounds scabbed over. During this time, Clyde stayed by the hospital bed every day, serving tea, pouring water, and changing dressings with meticulous care. She gradually recovered, but he fell ill, running a fever for several days. With 2 patients at home, Sylvia came to help. She drove them both home, keeping an eye on the medicinal brew in the kitchen while also helping Sarah change her dressings, constantly bustling about. Take good care of your injuries. The prenatal medicine will be brought up soon. Remember to drink it, Sarah agreed. When the medicine was brought up, she didn't drink a single drop, pouring it all down the toilet instead. After a few days of recuperation, she was barely able to get out of bed, so she picked up the empty bowl intending to take it downstairs and also get some sun outside. As she passed by the study, the sound of something shattering came from inside. The door was slightly ajar. Sarah glanced inside and saw Sylvia. She was staring blankly at the photos on the wall, her hanging hand trembling uncontrollably, her face filled with complex emotions. After a long while, she snapped out of it, tore off the photo, and threw everything from the cabinet into a box. Seeing her about to come out, Sarah quickly hid on the balcony at the end of the corridor. Before long, Sylvia's figure appeared in front of the trash bin by the door. She threw all the gifts inside, while the photos, love letters, and that diary were torn to shreds. After finishing all this, she made a phone call and summoned Clyde downstairs. The two had a big argument over the things in the trash bin, but because they were too far away, Sarah only faintly heard the last few sentences. These things shouldn't be in the study. What if one day Sarah goes in and sees them? She doesn't have a key to the study, nor would she barge in without my permission. Are you so certain? What if she goes in? Have you ever thought about how heartbroken she'd be seeing all this, given how much she likes you? What does it matter if she's heartbroken? Does that change the fact that it's always been you I've loved? Sylvia, forget about others. I'm asking you now, do you still have feelings for me? Just say the word, and I'll divorce her immediately. Hearing this, Sylvia turned pale and hurriedly flagged down a taxi, leaving in a fluster. Watching the two part on bad terms, Sarah silently raised her hand and pressed it against her chest. My heart was beating much faster, as if it were about to leap out of my chest, tingling slightly, but the pain had lessened. It seemed the wounds in her heart were gradually healing too. Great. Downstairs, Clyde dug out the things Sylvia had thrown away from the trash and took them back to the study. Then he locked the door and didn't come out for 3 days and nights. Sarah knew he was piecing together those fragments and didn't disturb him. Just made sure food was sent to him on time. After her leg recovered enough to move normally, Sarah met up with friends for several meals, enjoying small gatherings. After finishing the meal, she went to pay the bill first. As she passed by the largest private room, she overheard a familiar name. Clyde, you're usually so busy. We thought you wouldn't have time for the class reunion, so we didn't invite you. Our apologies. What are you talking about? Sylvia is already here. Clyde would be absent. Their relationship back then caused a sensation throughout S University. Don't tell me you didn't know that. How could that be? Back then, Clyde bought tens of thousands of roses to confess on the sports field. I was an eyewitness. Those songs he wrote for Sylvia, I can still hum them now. Sarah listened quietly for a while, and suddenly an image flashed through her mind. Clyde in a suit, playing guitar while confessing, yet no matter how she looked at it, there was an overwhelming sense of dissonance. She pondered for a moment before realizing what exactly was amiss. The person in the room was describing the 20-year-old Clyde. The one he loved was Sylvia. It had nothing to do with her. Of course it feels off. Sarah smiled silently, no longer having the desire to listen further. As she turned around, she saw Sylvia, who had just come out of the bathroom. Her eyelid twitched, and Sarah instinctively turned to detour toward the staircase. After only a few steps, she heard Sylvia's hesitant voice, Sarah. Sarah ignored it and simply quickened her pace. Just as she was about to turn the corner, Sylvia caught up and grabbed her hand. Sarah didn't want to run into her here and tried to leave, yet the other woman refused to let go, her voice filled with urgency. I know it's you. You must have misunderstood something. Please let me explain. As the two struggled, Sarah managed to break free with force, but the sudden motion made her lose balance, and she nearly toppled over. Sylvia's expression changed instantly as she quickly pulled her back. Sarah leaned against the staircase, barely managing to steady herself. Sylvia, however, lost her balance and tumbled down the stairs, lying bloodied in a pool of blood. Sarah's mind went blank with shock as she hurried down to try and save her. She had just reached out her hand when a powerful force violently knocked her down. Her forehead hit the corner of the wall, and blood gushed out, quickly staining her face red. Gasping in pain, she forced her eyes open and saw Clyde's murderous glare directed at her, gritting his teeth. He left behind one sentence before picking up Sylvia and rushing out like a madman. "If anything happens to Sylvia today, I swear I'll make you pay tenfold." The sound of hurried footsteps faded into the distance. Sarah could no longer hear anything, and the scene before her eyes grew increasingly blurred. It felt like a nerve was being pulled in her brain, sending waves of throbbing pain. The blood kept pooling, and her consciousness grew increasingly hazy. Boundless darkness enveloped her, leaving her feeling weightless as she gradually lost awareness. After what seemed like an eternity, Sarah groggily opened her eyes to see the doctor heave a deep sigh of relief. "Thankfully, your willpower is strong, otherwise you might have become comatose and never woken up again." She thanked the doctor and picked up the incessantly vibrating phone on the table. As soon as she pressed the answer button, she heard Clyde's anxious voice. "Sarah, where are you?" Sarah remained silent for a long time before giving the name of the hospital and the ward. 10 minutes later, the ward door was pushed open abruptly. Clyde rushed in with a panicked expression, his first concern being her physical condition. "How badly are you hurt? How's the baby in your womb?" "I thought you had pushed your aunt, that's why I got so angry. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have acted without knowing the full story. Please forgive me." From his words, Sarah guessed Sylvia must have already woken up and explained everything to him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have shown such a guilty and uneasy expression. She lowered her eyes and answered his question in a weak, exhausted voice. "It's nothing serious. The doctor said I'll recover after a few days of rest." Clyde thought her "I'm fine" included the baby too, and finally let go of his worry. He crouched down, wanting to touch her belly to confirm everything was all right. Sarah stopped him with just one sentence. "You and my aunt were college classmates." Clyde's hand froze mid-air. "Yeah, same college but different departments." "Why?" Seeing his hand awkwardly retract, Sarah lightly fluttered her eyelashes and spoke softly. "Nothing. Just noticed you both attended the same class reunion." Clyde's throat bobbed a few times before he stiffly changed the subject. "Are you hungry? I'll go buy you breakfast." Watching his fleeing figure, Sarah opened her calendar and counted the days. Only 10 days remained until the end of the divorce cooling-off period. Soon, she would finally be free from this marriage built on nothing but lies. During the more than a week in the hospital, Clyde didn't come as frequently as last time, but instead visited every few days. Sarah knew he had to juggle caring for Sylvia and didn't show any dissatisfaction. On the day of discharge, he did come personally to pick her up, but hurriedly left again right after dropping her at the doorstep. After watching his car disappear from sight, Sarah received a call from the immigration office notifying her that the paperwork was completed. She retrieved her documents, then went to cancel her household registration and ID card. After completing all this, she returned home and began packing her luggage. During the process, she sorted out many previously purchased couple items, photos together, and clothes and toys for the child, all of which she threw away. As she was discarding these things, Clyde happened to return, bringing a trunk full of luxury handbags. He quickly walked over, intending to take her to see, but his gaze fell on the items in the trash bin, and his expression darkened. "Baby, are you still mad at me? Is that why you threw all these away? I bought you so many bags. Let's forget about the past unhappiness, okay?" If it could be forgotten so easily, Sarah wouldn't have suffered for so long. She looked at the pile of gift boxes, her voice weary. "I'm not angry, and I don't need the gifts anymore." Seeing her unusual attitude, Clyde grabbed her hand. "What's been going on with you lately? Is there something I haven't done well enough? Tell me. Can we resolve this peacefully?" Sarah was at a loss for words and could only remain silent. Clyde's frown deepened as he was about to press further when her phone rang. "Sarah, come to the hospital quickly. Your aunt suddenly fainted, and the doctor said it's acute kidney failure." Standing by and hearing this news, Clyde completely lost his mind in an instant, all rationality gone. The color drained from his face, and his body trembled uncontrollably. Seeing him so panicked that he was about to drive in a daze, Sarah quickly took the car keys and rushed him over. In the hospital, the entire family, young and old, had gathered together, all undergoing kidney compatibility tests. The doctors bustled about while sighing in sympathy. Only 27 years old, so young to be struck by this illness. I don't see many family members around either. The chances of finding a match seem vanishingly small. Clyde's hand jerked violently, veins bulging on his forehead. He stared at the unconscious Sylvia on the hospital bed, then turned and gripped Sarah's shoulders. His voice trembling with desperation. "Sarah, you should go get typed too." Sarah's uncle was shocked upon hearing this and immediately tried to stop it. "No, Sarah is pregnant, she can't get typed," but Clyde insisted on taking her to get typed. Sarah could no longer bear it, shook off his hand, raised her head, and stared at him firmly. "What about the child if the match is successful?" Clyde's mind went blank, and he blurted out what was in his heart. "Saving her is the priority, Sarah. You're still young, we can have more children, she's your aunt, your mother's own sister. How can you just stand by and watch her suffer?" Upon hearing these words, Sarah's eyes suddenly reddened. A moment later, she lowered her head and smiled. Feeling a sudden sense of relief for having aborted the child, she asked no further and walked into the matching room, not to save his lover, but to save her aunt. 3 days later, the matching results came out. The bad news was that none of the family members met the criteria. The good news was that a matching kidney donor was found, and the other party agreed to donate. Upon hearing the news, Sarah called Clyde on the phone. He didn't answer. Knowing he must have been tirelessly searching worldwide for a suitable kidney donor these past days, she decided to visit the group headquarters in person. Just as she reached the office door, she heard several urgent voices coming from inside. "Clyde, are you really going to donate a kidney to Sylvia? Now that you're married to her niece, Sarah is even pregnant with your child. Just let go of the past and cherish the person in front of you. Yes, Sylvia doesn't deserve you sacrificing so much for her. Do you even know the side effects after kidney donation? Can't you think about Sarah, about your unborn child? The one who's going to donate a kidney to Sylvia is Clyde." Sarah's mind went blank for a moment. Barely able to process the information. "No need to persuade me further. I will definitely donate this kidney, not just one kidney, even my heart. If it could save Sylvia, I'd do it willingly. As for Sarah, she must never know about this. You must help me keep it a secret. Just tell her I went to Europe for a project." Sarah's hand, poised to knock, gradually lowered with each word she heard. "Clyde, what a true romantic you are. Don't worry, I'll completely step aside. Wishing you both a lifetime of happiness." She took a deep breath and silently turned to leave. After returning home, she booked a ticket to Australia. The next day, she woke up very early, solely because the 1-month cooling-off period for her divorce with Clyde had finally ended. She took a taxi to the Civil Affairs Bureau and swiftly retrieved her divorce certificate. Then she bought a gift box and placed both the divorce certificate and the abortion surgery notice inside it. After that, she carried the gift box and dragged her suitcase to the hospital. As soon as she arrived outside the VIP ward, she saw Clyde gazing through the window at Sylvia. His eyes held complex emotions, laughter, tears, pain, and boundless love. Sarah stood behind him, watching him silently for a long time before calling out to him in a hoarse voice, "When will the surgery begin?" Clyde turned around and saw it was her. All emotions faded from his face, leaving only a gentle smile that was no different from his usual expression. "The doctor said it would be in 3 hours. But I have a business trip to attend. I probably won't be back until a month later, Sarah. I'm sorry I can't be with you at a time like this." This time, Sarah still didn't expose his lie. She replied to him calmly with a single sentence, "It's okay, Uncle, I'll get used to it." "Get used to what?" Clyde found her words strange and couldn't help but ask further. Sarah remained silent, answering quietly in her heart, "Used to you not loving me, used to you ignoring me, and also, used to a life completely without you." Before she could speak, the doctor's call came through. Clyde answered the phone and headed straight for the elevator. Sarah stopped him and handed over that box. "Your birthday is in just half a month. Here's your gift." Clyde didn't open it and casually handed it to the assistant beside him. "Then I'll open it on my birthday." Sarah said nothing, watching him walk away. Then, she also turned around. As he was being wheeled into the operating room to donate a kidney to Sylvia, she was heading to the airport with her suitcase. As he was given anesthesia and the surgery was about to begin, she waited to board the plane while deleting and clearing all her social media accounts, phone cards, and photo albums. By the time his surgery ended, her plane was slowly taking off. She gazed at the white clouds outside the window, a faint smile slowly curling at the corners of her lips. "Clyde, from now on, the mountains are high and the waters wide. We shall never meet again." Pushed out of the operating room, Clyde slowly emerged from the anesthesia in a half-dreaming, half-awake state. The moment he regained consciousness, he immediately grabbed the doctor's sleeve and said urgently, "Doctor, Sylvia, how is she?" The doctor was pulled down hastily and bent over to respond. Her surgery was successful, but she hasn't woken up yet. You don't need to worry too much. However, Clyde only heard the news that Sylvia hadn't woken up. Struggling to get out of bed, his freshly operated body sent waves of tearing pain through him. But he paid no heed and directly threw off the blanket to get out of bed. The doctor quickly supported him, somewhat helplessly advising, "You've just had surgery. You can't get out of bed and walk around yet." "No, I must see her to feel at ease." The Clyde before them completely refused to listen to any advice. Struggling to get out of bed and walk, the doctor, seeing persuasion was useless, had no choice but to have someone bring a wheelchair. The doctor pushed Clyde, pushing him, bringing him to Sylvia's hospital room. Clyde finally saw Sylvia lying on the bed in the ward. Sylvia was unconscious, her face haggard, but she appeared unharmed. At this moment, Clyde finally let out a sigh of relief, his heart gradually filled with contentment as he gazed tenderly at Sylvia. "Sylvia, though we cannot be together in this lifetime, I am happy. From now on, a part of me will always be with you. So, does this count as us being together?" Until evening, Clyde never left Sylvia's hospital room. It wasn't until dinner time that Clyde reluctantly left, instructing his assistant to arrange his transfer to the same hospital. He couldn't let Sylvia know it was him who donated the kidney to her, otherwise, Sylvia would definitely be sad. Clyde was transferred to another hospital, and within a couple of days, Sylvia woke up. Clyde was even happier than Sylvia and called her every day, meticulously reminding her about everything from daily meals to the warmth of her bed. Clyde took care of every detail, but it was raining that day. Sylvia went to bed early. Clyde suddenly remembered Sarah, whom he had forgotten. These days Sarah hasn't sent a single message, which is unusual because normally whenever Clyde goes on a business trip, Sarah would send lots of messages checking in on him. Sometimes she would even proactively call to update him on her recent situation. But it's been so many days, and he hasn't received any messages or calls. Clyde dialed Sarah's number, only to hear the automated voice message change to "The number you have dialed is not in service." How could it be out of service? Clyde unwillingly searched for Sarah's number, only to find that messages couldn't be sent, displaying account deactivated. The other party's account is no longer available. A sudden, intense sense of panic surged in his heart. Clyde hurriedly called the family butler. "Sarah, is she at home?" "Madam left 7 days ago and hasn't returned yet." "Didn't you know, young master?" "What, 7 days ago? That was the day of his surgery." He was donating a kidney to Sylvia at the time. How could he have known? So Sarah left without a word. Did she know something? Clyde felt a tightness in his chest, the panic making his face even paler. He felt as though something was about to leave him forever. Where could Sarah have gone? Clyde pondered for a moment before calling his assistant, his voice carrying a barely detectable urgency. "Go find Sarah's family and ask them where Sarah has gone." After the assistant acknowledged, Clyde fell silent for a moment. Beginning to consider whether Sarah had left anything behind before, he strained to recall, suddenly remembering that Sarah had deliberately left him a box when she departed. Sarah said this was a birthday gift given to him half a month in advance. This was the anomaly. Why suddenly give him this gift half a month early? Where did he put it again? Clyde recalled a vague memory. He was preparing for surgery at the time and had no mind to pay attention to Sarah. So? It seems he just casually handed it over to his assistant. Thinking this, Clyde hurriedly added, "While you're at it, come to the hospital and bring me the box that Sarah gave me last time." Gazing out the window, Clyde felt an inexplicable sense of emptiness. Wondering about Sarah's unusual behavior these days, Clyde remembered that day when he watched Sarah throw all those things into the trash bin. Her attitude was indifferent, her words cold. "I'm not angry, and the gifts are unnecessary." Later when he pressed for answers, Sarah only responded with silence. Then he crouched down, wanting to touch her belly to confirm she was unharmed. Sarah interrupted his movement with just one sentence, "You and Auntie were college classmates at that time." Clyde abruptly changed the subject. Could it be that she had already known about this matter since then? But he was merely suspicious. Clyde didn't think there was anything about himself worth suspecting. Clyde recalled the last time he saw her. When he said he was going on a business trip, Sarah just calmly replied with a single sentence, "It's all right, Uncle, I'll get used to it." Get used to what? At that time, Sarah didn't give any reply either. Thinking about it now, Sarah did seem a bit odd. And a bad premonition enveloped him. At this moment, the assistant quickly arrived at the hospital, holding the box Clyde had asked him to bring. Clyde took the gift, examining the small box in front of him. Weighing it in his hands a couple of times, and found it to be very light. Young master, I'm already investigating Madam's whereabouts, but I still need a little more time. Find out as soon as possible. Clyde didn't even lift his head as he opened the red box before him, yet upon opening it, he was stunned to see the divorce agreement and divorce certificate inside the box. Clyde was so angry he almost laughed, completely baffled by Sarah's antics. Sarah, now pregnant, had pulled the stunt of running away from home, and now she'd even left him divorce papers. There should be limits to throwing tantrums, but soon, he saw the abortion procedure notice at the very bottom of the box. He stared at the notice in disbelief, only to find the date on it was exactly Sylvia's return day. A wave of dizziness overwhelmed him, and Clyde fainted on the spot out of sheer anger, until the moment he completely lost consciousness. He couldn't believe that Sarah had actually aborted their child just like that. The assistant screamed for a doctor in terror, repeatedly calling Clyde's name. The medical staff arrived in a hurry at this moment and together rushed Clyde into the emergency room. Meanwhile, at the center of the airport, Sarah's plane had just landed in Australia. The first thing she did after disembarking was instinctively reaching for her phone to send a message to Clyde, but she suddenly remembered she was already divorced from Clyde. There will be no further intersections in the future. The moment she opened number on her phone, she saw a newly added unfamiliar contact. A sudden surge of unreality threatened to overwhelm her. Sarah once again confirmed that she was truly divorced, had left Clyde, and had walked away from this enormous lie. At the moment she raised her head, Sarah made up her mind to start a new life in this foreign land. Sarah took a taxi to the residence she had arranged from back home. The landlady was very warm-hearted. Seeing that she had come abroad alone, she even specially invited her for a meal at her home. Sarah did not decline. She took out the expensive silk scarf and tea she had brought from home from her suitcase, dressed up carefully, and then went to visit. The landlady and her family warmly welcomed Sarah. To entertain Sarah, they even prepared several hours in advance, paying meticulous attention to every detail from the careful handling of delicacies to the decoration of the entire room, all filled with heartfelt effort. The walls were adorned with colorful ribbons and signs, creating an extremely festive atmosphere. Even the variety of food on the table was exceptionally abundant. There was delicious freshly made pasta, as well as a whole tray of bacon and chicken pizza loaded with generous toppings. Even their whole family thoughtfully considered that Sarah might feel uncomfortable, so they prepared delicious cola, fried chicken with fries, and fresh noodles for her. They also thoughtfully prepared a welcome gift for Sarah, which was a very warm and beautiful pink and white blanket. Throughout the meal, the landlady and her family were very warm and even suggested that Sarah could often join them for meals in the future. That evening, they talked a lot, and the landlady and her family kindly told Sarah about many people and things to pay attention to while living here. Until late at night, the whole family was still patiently answering Sarah's questions. During this time, there were always some amusing misunderstandings due to language barriers. This made Sarah laugh involuntarily, and occasionally even burst into hearty laughter. It had been a long time since she had laughed so freely and joyfully. The atmosphere tonight was incredibly harmonious, as if they weren't strangers from different countries meeting for the first time, but rather like long-lost friends reuniting after many years. The meticulous care in almost every detail made Sarah deeply feel an extraordinary warmth. This made Sarah even reluctant to leave. But when the family was preparing to watch TV together, Sarah politely said her goodbyes first. After returning to her accommodation, Sarah thoroughly freshened up and even took some time for skincare. Such tranquility and comfort made Sarah feel a long-lost sense of relaxation. After washing up, Sarah collapsed directly onto the bed. She gazed at the white ceiling, scanning her small yet exquisitely decorated and warm little house. Feeling a heart full of contentment, Sarah closed her eyes and suddenly wondered, Clyde, when exactly would he realize she had left? But I guess Clyde would probably be overjoyed if he knew she had left him. After all, with her gone, nothing would stand in the way of him being with her aunt anymore. And during those days, Sarah could also tell that her aunt still had lingering feelings for Clyde as well, especially since Clyde had even donated a kidney for her. Her aunt must have been deeply moved. Perhaps Clyde has already gotten his wish and ended up with his aunt. As she thought about it, Sarah unconsciously drifted into a deep sleep, dreamless until dawn. Sarah had just arrived in Australia and was still unfamiliar with everything. Moreover, the events back home had left her physically and mentally exhausted, and she didn't feel like working for the time being, so she decided to take some time to wander around and relax. In recent days, She attended services at church, the morning bells and the solemn, reverent expressions of everyone around her brought an unparalleled sense of peace to her heart. Afterward, she joined a local tour group to visit the new State Art Gallery. When she saw these vibrant colors in the art gallery, Sarah caught a glimpse of another side of the world. Later, she also watched a performance of Cinderella at the Sydney Opera House with the group. In the story, although Cinderella suffered inhuman abuse, she still achieved a happy ending. Under the highly infectious performance, Sarah even shed tears for this fairy tale she had long been familiar with. In the Blue Mountains National Park, Sarah experienced incredibly fresh air, saw the emerald green lake, and even went to the beach to feed seagulls. She even woke up early and went to Port Stephens at 6 in the morning to take a boat out to sea for whale watching. The massive blue whale leaped right out of the water before Sarah's eyes, its tail dragging a long trail of sparkling droplets in the air. Like a breathtaking masterpiece of the world, the cascading water droplets fell upon Sarah's face and body. This moment gave her an immense shock. The refreshing sensation suddenly opening her mind with clarity, she suddenly realized how vast the world was, and that so many beautiful things were waiting for her to discover. Sarah clearly realized at this moment that all these years she had been trapped only by Clyde and had almost lost herself. At this moment, Sarah finally completely let go of her one-sided love with Clyde, which began with deception. In the following days, Sarah was incredibly fortunate to meet a foreign girl during her travels who clicked with her perfectly. They had merely exchanged glances and chatted briefly on a cruise ship, only to discover that their thoughts aligned in unexpected ways. While having lunch and chatting together in a sunlit French restaurant, this foreign young lady noticed Sarah had her own unique insights about wine. She even enthusiastically invited Sarah to work at her vineyard estate. Sarah was flattered. Although she had indeed studied viticulture and oenology before and had some professional knowledge in this area, she hadn't worked at all since graduation. This made her hesitate a little. Was she really capable of doing it, yet? He noticed her hesitation and said bluntly, "Sarah, your idea about wine tasting really impressed me. I think no one could be more suitable for this job than you. Hey, dear, don't overthink it. I'll help you. Believe in yourself." They even went out of their way to Sarah, cheering her on and encouraging her to believe in herself. Sarah looked at the smiling face before her, continuously offering encouragement, and felt nothing but warmth in her heart. She politely expressed her thanks and accepted the job with utmost solemnity. At this moment, Clyde was being wheeled out of the emergency room. Seeing that he had no close relatives by his side, the doctor specifically gave the assistant detailed instructions. The patient has just undergone surgery. Avoid stimulating him recently, as too much emotional fluctuation is not advisable. The assistant repeatedly agreed, but in his hands, he held the carefully kept divorce agreement, the abortion procedure statement, and the divorce certificate. Feeling utterly helpless and on the verge of tears, what on earth are this couple up to? The boss donated a kidney to his first love. The wife was even more ruthless. She directly aborted the child and vanished without a trace. The assistant could only feel a throbbing headache. Now, no matter what he said, it was too late. All he could do was hurry and investigate the wife's whereabouts. Meanwhile, in the hospital room, Clyde woke up, after regaining consciousness. He thought of everything he had seen in the box and couldn't believe it for a long time. He stared blankly at the ceiling, feeling as if he were dreaming. Sarah not only disappeared but also divorced him, even heartlessly abandoning their child. As these thoughts crossed his mind, he suddenly grew anxious. "I want to go home." The assistant at the door shuddered and burst in, seeing Clyde's determination to return home to find Sarah. The assistant could no longer dissuade him and quickly helped pack, all the while trying to calm his boss and urging him to stay composed, afraid of upsetting Clyde again, causing any further emotional turmoil. Finally, Clyde returned home with his assistant, but seeing the once fully packed house now missing pieces here and there, Clyde felt an emptiness in his heart. Everything in the house related to Sarah had vanished, along with all the things they had bought together for their unborn child. All gone. At first in the hospital, Clyde was still unwilling to accept it. He believed Sarah still loved him and was just momentarily angry that she would never leave him no matter what, but the empty house before him told him the harsh reality. He was wrong, terribly wrong. Sarah was really gone. She had thrown away all the gifts he gave her, and even abandoned their child, of course, including him. He remained silent for a long time, sitting quietly on the sofa with vacant eyes. He had never felt his home so unfamiliar and desolate before. "Young master, I've already inquired with the madam's family. but there's no news of her. The assistant glanced at Clyde's expression and cautiously asked him, "Should we keep investigating?" Clyde sneered, still seething with anger. "No need, in that case, just disappear. It's not like he loved her anyway." On the way back to the hospital, Clyde felt an emptiness in his heart, as if a huge chunk had been forcibly torn out. His thoughts were tangled like a mess of threads, binding his mind until it felt ready to burst. As he looked at the city, memories of Sarah flooded back to him. These fragments of memory hung like a thick fog in his heart, indistinct yet strikingly vivid. Hesitating, Clyde finally spoke to his assistant, "Sarah, keep looking into it." After saying this, he seemed to feel slightly more at ease, staring at his own reflection on the window. Clyde couldn't even comprehend what was going through his mind. From beginning to end, he had only treated her as a substitute, and he knew very clearly that the one he truly loved was always Sylvia. So why did the thought of Sarah disappearing like this make him feel so miserable? He couldn't figure it out, only knowing that if he didn't investigate further, his heart would remain unbearably stifled. It must be because they had been married for a full 2 years after all. It must be because Sarah was, after all, Sylvia's niece. If Sarah went missing and her life was in danger, he wouldn't be able to explain it to Sylvia. That must be it. That's right, in this manner. Even Sarah herself didn't expect things to go so smoothly. Not only did she secure an important job as a bartender here, but she also befriended many local master brewers. In fact, here Sarah even learned to prepare some exquisitely beautiful dishes during her leisure time. Sarah could also arrange shopping trips together. Under the leadership, Sarah not only saw a significant increase in salary but also became increasingly fluent and proficient in English through teaching. Initially, the extremely enthusiastic landlady would frequently invite her to parties and sometimes even bring small dishes for Sarah. In return, Sarah would specially prepare some delicious Chinese and local dishes to actively invite the landlady and her family over as guests. She grew increasingly bright and confident, and when sharing her experiences during this period, Sarah also felt remarkably more at ease with herself. Even when talking about those amusing experiences, Sarah couldn't help but laugh out loud. A joyful feeling constantly surrounded her, and the landlady also said Sarah seemed like a completely different person, praising her endlessly. Sarah then realized she had been in this unfamiliar country for about a month. It was the first time she felt time passing so swiftly, with each day being unexpectedly joyful. In the past, whenever she made even the slightest mistake, she would inevitably be Clyde scolded a few words, but here, what she heard more often was "it's okay." These days, her sister was preparing to welcome her brother, and she actually started getting ready 3 days in advance. This made Sarah extremely curious. The timing of meeting her brother was quite interesting. Sarah was tasting wine at the vineyard at that moment, and every bottle of red wine before her had its own unique name. She was carefully sampling and jotting down the distinctive flavors of each wine, but halfway through writing, her fountain pen suddenly ran out of ink. Sarah felt somewhat frustrated. Following her usual habit, she flicked the pen tip, but no ink splattered out, just as she was feeling disheartened and about to get up to look for ink. She noticed a man dressed impeccably in a suit, who had even styled his hair for the occasion. Ink stains dotted his face, spreading like dark blossoms across the man's skin. Sarah couldn't help but laugh at the somewhat awkward situation, yet the man before her showed no discomfort, instead joining in her laughter. Sarah, noticing the man's distinguished demeanor and his impeccably tailored suit, immediately assumed he was the expert mentioned some time ago. So she quickly moistened a tissue and handed it to the man before her, expressing her deep apologies. The man's eyes were a light brown, resembling Sarah's recent memory of a Salt Lake's color, exceptionally beautiful. Unexpectedly, instead of thanking her directly, the man took the wet wipe and immediately asked Sarah, "What's your name? Can I pursue you?" Such a straightforward question made Sarah blush immediately, leaving her somewhat flustered. The man before her then introduced himself as Jezima, the older brother of this estate. Sarah had been waiting for 3 days, and now this brother appeared. He even stood right in front of Sarah, falling in love at first sight and declaring his intention to pursue her. At this very moment, Sarah felt as if she were treading on soft clouds, completely at a loss for how to react, because the man before her was tall and handsome, with sharp facial features and a straight nose. A very typical look of a foreign heartthrob. Sarah praised Jezima in English and mentioned that she was working as a bartender at this manor. Realizing Sarah was deliberately avoiding the topic of pursuit, Jezima still didn't give up. Instead, he once again expressed his fondness for Sarah, with such blatant affection that it made Sarah's face flush. She was at a loss for how to react, and soon a rosy blush spread across her fair face. Fortunately, someone entered at that moment, breaking the somewhat awkward atmosphere. Yet the next day, Jessima actually arrived early at Sarah's workplace, waiting for her with a large bouquet of flowers. Sarah knew there was no way to avoid it, so she led the person to a very secluded place, intending to clarify the matter. Jessima, it's true that I'm currently a single woman, but it's just not possible between us. Jessima, however, looked utterly confused and asked with some puzzlement, then why can't we try being together? Sarah, seeing Jessima so persistent, had no choice but to explain carefully, I've been divorced. I do have an ex-husband. Jessima's eyes were full of confusion. He fell silent for a brief moment, but didn't hear Sarah show any intention to continue. Somewhat puzzled, he said, is that all? Is this the only reason you're rejecting my pursuit of you? Sarah widened her eyes in disbelief. Isn't this enough? But Jessima said, what era is this? It's more surprising to me that a beautiful girl like you has never been in a relationship. I like you, no matter what has happened in your past. Sarah's heart felt as if it had been tightly squeezed, a warm sensation enveloping her. She kept staring at the smiling boy before her, her heart inevitably racing. Jessima even took Sarah directly off work, letting her follow him outside to have some fun. Sarah initially thought she wouldn't agree, but then saw him take some money from his pocket and actively hand it to Jessima, telling him to take Sarah out for a good time, his eyes full of encouragement and teasing. This made Sarah flush even more. Despite it already being late autumn, the sun was exceptionally bright. Unlike Clyde, who would only take her to the mall to casually buy a couple of clothes and call it a date, Jessima brought Sarah to the seaside. The azure sea, accompanied by the salty sea breeze, sent Sarah's dress fluttering. Jessima promptly tied his own coat around her. Jessima wore only a thin shirt, his brown curls swaying in the wind. His eyes were clear and bright, shining under the sunlight like the purest blue jade. For a moment, Sarah was mesmerized, but then, Jessima even took her hand directly and led her running along the beach. The sensation of warm sand beneath their feet was magical as Jessima led her running toward the seashore, where the damp sand lay just ahead. Wave after wave crashed against the shore, and Jessima flashed Sarah a grin before suddenly releasing Sarah's hand. She unbuttoned her shirt, tossed it onto the sand, revealing her sun-kissed skin underneath. Her evenly toned muscles showcased a remarkably healthy physique, even boasting a well-defined eight-pack. Sarah blinked a few extra times in reflex. Just as she was about to turn away shyly, Jessima grabbed her arm. Hold on to me. The warm touch left her no time to exclaim. Without thinking, she did as Jessima said, placing her hand on Jessima's shoulder as the latter suddenly crouched down. The next moment, she realized Jessima's hand was actually gripping her foot directly. In her shock, one of her shoes was swiftly removed by Jessima. He even took off his socks along with them. If you don't take them off, they'll get damp. Jessima's righteous and earnest gaze remained fixed on Sarah. Sarah hurriedly took off her other shoe in a fluster when her feet touched the soft sand. Sarah couldn't hide the delight shining in her eyes. This sensation is truly marvelous. Jessima pulled Sarah along as they ran across the beach. The fierce wind gradually filled Sarah's dress, then slipped away with remarkable agility, leaving behind only a feeling of lightness and comfort. Her body felt increasingly weightless in the gale as she ran. What was once Sarah's most detested form of exercise had now become an activity she longed to experience again. This beach run seemed to have opened up Sarah in an entirely new way. She paid no heed to the gazes of those around her and started running on the spot. Not far away, Jessima watched with a smile on her face. Sarah then directly splashed a wave of water that flew and scattered all over Sarah. The pink glow of the setting sun fell upon the two of them as they chased, played, and ran, with the sparkling droplets in the air, etching each other deeply into their eyes. It had been a full month since the surgery. Clyde came to the hospital specifically to take care of Sylvia until she was discharged. However, Sylvia noticed that Clyde wasn't accompanied by Sarah. Sarah, why didn't you come? Clyde hesitation flickered in his eyes as he forced a smile and said, after all, she's pregnant now and not in the best condition, so I didn't let her come. Sylvia didn't suspect anything and nodded. She motioned for Clyde to sit down, then said with great seriousness, you just focus on building a good life with Sarah, and forget about everything from the past, okay? Clyde looked at Sylvia, his eyes evasive as he responded, then stood up to help her sit. He peeled the apple in his hand, carefully cut it into pieces, and fed them to her bit by bit. From then on, every day, Clyde came. At first, he brought plenty of nourishing medicinal meals and black chicken soup, then stayed with Sylvia to watch TV. Every evening, Clyde would be Sylvia chased away. "You should go home now, it's almost dinner time. I'm feeling much better already. Sarah can't be left alone at home, can she?" In the following days, Sylvia noticed that Clyde seemed reluctant to go home, gradually realizing something was amiss, but she never confronted him, because she hadn't experienced such peaceful and happy days in a long time. On this weekend, Sylvia saw a couple supporting each other as they walked in the cafeteria. The woman was pregnant, her face glowing with happiness. Witnessing this moment, Sylvia finally couldn't hold back when she saw Clyde again and asked, "Clyde, Sarah isn't in any trouble, is she? Why hasn't she come to see me all this time? And you too, coming here every day with such a terrible look on your face. Has something happened?" Clyde still instinctively defended. "No, she's just not in good health these days and has trouble walking, but logically, Sarah should have called me by now these days." As she spoke, Sylvia found it increasingly strange. She frowned tightly and said, "Did you have a fight with Sarah?" The more she said it, Sylvia felt it was more likely, and her voice grew sharper. "What exactly happened between you two?" Seeing Clyde still trying to avoid the issue, Sylvia grew somewhat annoyed. "Call Sarah right now." Clyde felt utterly overwhelmed. With a defeated sigh, he told Sylvia that they had already divorced. After hearing everything, Sylvia's eyes immediately filled with heartache and self-reproach. Clenching her fists, she struck the bed in frustration. "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have come back to the country. If I were abroad now, none of this would have happened. It's all my fault." Immediately after, Sylvia hurriedly asked Clyde, "So Sarah, where is she now?" Clyde sighed, rubbing his temples with a headache. "I found out that Sarah is currently in Australia, and she's safe. All of this is my fault. If it weren't for me, she wouldn't have left." Seeing Sylvia's furrowed brows and worried expression, Clyde felt even more guilty. "It's all my fault, it has nothing to do with you." But soon, Clyde placed his hand on Sylvia's. The scorching heat made Sylvia instinctively want to pull away. She withdrew her hand, but Clyde grasped it again. When their eyes met, Clyde clearly saw Sylvia's conflicted expression. "Sylvia, I want to be with you." Sylvia shook her head, full of struggle. "We can't be together." Clyde didn't listen and hugged Sylvia. Feeling the familiar embrace, Sylvia wavered. After a brief struggle, she chose to return the hug to Clyde. In the hospital, Clyde would hold Sylvia's hand tightly while watching movies together in the dark. During horror films, afraid she might get scared, he would cover her eyes firmly. Just as they used to do back in their school days, almost down to the smallest detail, Clyde took care of everything personally. He would climb 6 flights of stairs daily just to fetch the most refreshing hot water for Sylvia. He would also carefully tend to the flowers he brought every day. Every evening, he would push Sylvia around the small hospital square for a walk, occasionally supporting her as they watched the elderly play chess under the sunset, basking in the sunlight. They looked like an ordinary couple, but Sylvia noticed that Clyde often seemed lost in thought, either staring at pregnant women or at random objects. At first Sylvia thought it was just him being uncomfortable, but today she noticed Clyde standing there in a daze. Following his gaze, Sylvia saw a couple sharing cotton candy. They held cotton candy, one smiling while the other turned away in disdain. Clyde recalled the first time he went to the mall with Sarah after their marriage. He bought her 2 pieces of clothing, but Sarah seemed uninterested the whole time. Later, he finally agreed to Sarah's request to buy her an overly sweet cotton candy. Sarah was just like this when she took the cotton candy, her face full of joy, even wanting him to try the extremely sweet, cloying cotton candy. At that time, he was also strongly resistant, saying he wouldn't buy Sarah cotton candy anymore. Sarah finally gave up, but while eating the cotton candy, her eyes remained smiling the whole time. Sylvia thought he just wanted to eat cotton candy, so she said with a smile, "Why are you still acting like a child? If you want to eat it, just go buy one." Clyde shook his head and said, "Sarah loves to eat this." But soon he defended himself. "I just suddenly remembered it, that's all." Sylvia noticed but didn't say anything. At night, Sylvia was about to get up when she heard Clyde, who was keeping her company by the bed, murmuring something in his sleep. "Sarah, why did you leave?" This unconscious sleep talk made Sylvia pause for a moment. She looked at the sleeping Clyde bathed in moonlight and sighed. Under the moonlight, the cool air made Sylvia resolve to return to where she belonged. Back to Paris. The next day, Sylvia asked Clyde to pick up the arriving relatives, then promptly completed the formalities and prepared to leave. She left a letter behind, Clyde picked up the person as requested. But upon returning to the hospital room, he saw only an empty bed by the door, and a letter on the sickbed. Clyde realized something and hurriedly opened the letter. Clyde, could it be that you've already fallen in love with Sarah without realizing it? Have you realized, you always think of her, those days that no one else could replace? Clyde, stop hesitating, go to Australia and win Sarah back, and I, too, must begin my new life. Clyde looked at the letter in his hand. His expression somewhat dazed, he stared at Sylvia's handwriting on the letter, lost in thought for a long while. Does he really like Sarah? Clyde and Sarah have been together for 3 whole years. In their 2 years of married life, they never had a fight, never missed a gift or anniversary, and were perfectly harmonious both in bed and in daily life. Like all couples, they knew each other's little quirks and eating habits. He knew Sarah was all tough talk but soft-hearted. Knew she needed the light on to sleep for a sense of security. And he also knew Sarah loved seafood but wouldn't eat shrimp. He understood the meaning behind her subconscious gestures, yet sometimes deliberately ignored them, too lazy to respond. While Sarah never held it against him, even massaged his shoulders and prepared bath water for him, in those days, Clyde always felt time passed too quickly. Actually, Clyde still remembered the moment he proposed to Sarah. The weather that day wasn't actually good, it was a gloomy, rainy day. Clyde hesitated for a moment about whether to propose to Sarah on such an unpromising day, but when he saw Sarah surprisingly discover the venue ahead of time, her face lighting up with joy, her eyes sparkling as if sunlight had shone into them, Clyde resolutely decided to propose. Just a simply arranged venue was enough to make Sarah happy. Even though he hadn't even asked her to prepare a proper dress or put on some light makeup, later, although she complained that she wasn't prepared at all, she still happily embraced Clyde. She would even whisper softly in his ear, "I do." At that time, he remembered spinning Sarah around 3 times in his arms. They rode bikes together across the sea-crossing bridge, shouting from the bridge to declare to the world that they were together and would live happily ever after. Those scenes still feel as vivid as if they were right before their eyes. Later, they got married, decorated the wedding venue together, and fretted over the arrangements for their new home. They bickered under countless sunsets. Sarah would still cook delicious meals for him, even though the dishes were initially too salty overall. But with Sarah's efforts, everything gradually got better and better. Sarah would take her parents to the market and even learn moxibustion and massage specifically for them. She always faced everything with a smile, as if she would always be happy. Clyde suddenly remembered countless Sarah's memories flooding towards Clyde like a dam opening on a lake. The Sarah who could be satisfied with just one cotton candy, the one who would act coquettish as soon as he teased her Sarah, the one who would pout on her own when feeling wronged Sarah. The one who would always smile at him, seeking comfort Sarah. So many, many Sarahs he had seen, yet now it seemed he might never see them again. Thinking this, Clyde truly felt a void in his heart, as if something had been abruptly taken from him. A sense of unease and frustration made his whole body tremble. He immediately asked his assistant to book the earliest flight to Australia. He solidified his resolve. He was going to apologize, he's going to confess his feelings, he wants to find Sarah. Clyde arrived in Australia and found Sarah working at a winery. Sarah stood quietly at the entrance of the wine cellar, holding a brown workbook in her hand. Unlike back home, her hair had grown much longer now, slightly curled and dyed brown. Dressed in a fitted and neatly pressed work uniform, she quietly surveyed the wine cellar, conducting an inventory. The focused expression on her face was something Clyde had never seen before. Sarah looked at the workbook in her hands, her pen still scribbling something continuously. Her eyes were calm, exuding an air of complete composure, efficient and decisive. The moment he saw Sarah again, Clyde realized just how much he had missed her. He suddenly felt like an uninvited guest who would disturb the peace and tranquility before him, as if taking even one step forward would shatter the serenity. But Clyde knew that if he didn't do this, he would surely regret it. "Sarah, I came to apologize." When she saw it was Clyde, Sarah's expression changed, and she immediately turned to leave. Clyde hurried forward, his trembling hand grabbing Sarah's arm. He held on desperately, afraid that Sarah would leave again, disappearing from his world. More than anything, he wanted to touch her, to confirm whether the person before him was real. Clyde still couldn't quite believe it was real. "I won't accept this." Sarah used her bare hands Clyde's grip on her arm, prying it open finger by finger, as each digit was forced apart. Clyde was greedily taking in the sight of Sarah, who now stood finally within reach. She seems to have lost some weight, but her complexion looks much better now. Even the small mole near her eyelid appears so familiar and adorable. Yet the little face before him was filled with struggle and panic. Unconsciously, he lowered his head and noticed his fingers being pried open one by one. A heavy sense of unease and terror suddenly surged straight into Clyde's mind. His voice was urgent and frantic. "Sarah, give me a chance, will you?" The landlady next door had just stepped out with a watering can in hand, ready to tend to her flowers. "The winery isn't far from here." Sarah was outside, and the landlady saw that Sarah seemed to be harassed by a man. She quickly grabbed the watering can and ran over shouting, "Sarah, I'm coming," shouting. The rather large-framed landlady ran straight over and bumped into Clyde with her shoulder. Clyde winced in pain, stumbled backward, and nearly fell straight back, but managed to steady himself just in time. "Who are you? Keep harassing me, and I'll beat you until your own mother won't recognize you." The landlady brandished a watering can, looking as protective as a mother hen, both majestic and fierce. "I am Sarah's husband," Sarah immediately retorted, grabbing the landlady's arm and saying, "It's my ex-husband. We've been divorced for a long time." The landlady didn't know what had happened between the two, glancing at the man before her and then at Sarah, noticing the panic all over her face. She immediately realized Sarah was extremely resistant to this man's approach. Waving the shower head in her hand, the landlady stepped closer and mercilessly struck at Clyde. Clyde never expected the woman before him to strike without warning. Caught off guard, he was heavily hit by the shower head. The pain radiating from his arm forced him to retreat, step back, and retreat further. The shower head was no lightweight, it was a large capacity one. Had he been struck multiple times, bruises would undoubtedly have appeared on his body. Clyde dared not approach again and could only call out from a distance to Sarah, "Sarah, I truly came to apologize." No sooner had these words been spoken than the landlady came charging at him again, brandishing her large watering can. Clyde quickly stepped back to protect himself and retreated further away, watching Clyde being chased off by the landlady, looking back every few steps as he reluctantly walked away. Sarah felt a suffocating sense of oppression enveloping her. Just the sight of Clyde filled her with tension and uncertainty. Sarah tugged at the landlady's sleeve somewhat dejectedly and thanked her. Seeing Sarah with such an expression, the landlady patted her hand reassuringly and comforted her. "Don't be afraid. Next time I see that guy, I'll beat him up again." Sarah nodded gratefully, the glistening in her eyes slowly fading away. Indeed, she was no longer the original Sarah. She was not alone at this moment. Clyde watched from afar as their figures gradually shrank into two indistinguishable black dots before vanishing from sight. Sarah must have seen how angry she was, but she would never give up on him. Clyde thought this way and decided to first call and book a hotel to stay temporarily. Planning his next steps carefully, he kept comforting himself. Sarah loved him so much, there was no way she would completely abandon him. Upon entering the landlady's room, Sarah explained the whole story to her. The evening glow streamed in through the window, and after hearing everything, the landlady's eyes were filled with deep sympathy and compassion. She stood up, embraced Sarah before her, and patted her back repeatedly to comfort her. "Sarah, don't be sad, it's all over now." Sarah, who had been trying hard to hold back her tears, suddenly felt an inexplicable sting in her eyes within this warm embrace. The uncontrollable tears flowed more and more fiercely, as the panic and sorrow that had been accumulating in Sarah's chest seemed to erupt all at once. They streamed down Sarah's cheeks, growing more and more intense. The landlady kept patting her back, gently and warmly. How could she not feel wronged? In the 3 years they spent together, she grew up surrounded by love every single day. They had gone through so much hand in hand, and everything was still vivid in her mind, as if etched into her heart. The slightest trigger would send memories rushing at her like a sandstorm, overwhelming her completely. Then, she resolutely gave up pursuing her own career and married him right after graduation. She had been full of hope, only to discover that all these years were nothing but a lie. From beginning to end, she had merely been a substitute. Even the child she had longed for was treated by this man as nothing more than a replacement for love. All her efforts in Clyde's eyes were attributed to Sylvia. Everything in Clyde's heart bore Sylvia's mark. Why did she have to experience all this? Why did everything turn out to be in vain in the end? She didn't know how long she had been crying. Her vision blurred as she opened her eyes, seeing the room now completely bathed in the glow of the evening sunset. The warm golden light made Sarah's vision clearer and warmer, her tears gradually subsiding unconsciously. All the emotions in her chest seemed illuminated by sunlight, the damp and sorrowful feelings dissipating like mist. The next day, Sarah went to work as usual. while Clyde had already been waiting early at the grape vineyard. He even specifically requested Sarah to host him. Sarah couldn't refuse the guest's request and had to take Clyde around for a tour and explanation. Clyde being in such close contact with Sarah, he discovered her vast reservoir of professional knowledge, which felt both unfamiliar and intriguing to him. "Why do you know so much about wine?" Sarah replied calmly. "I majored in viticulture and enology in college." The cold and distant tone felt like a heavy blow, leaving Clyde somewhat dazed. It turned out that after 3 years with Sarah, he still didn't understand her at all, and a faint bitterness filled his heart. Finally, it was Sarah's time to get off work. As soon as she finished her handover, she spotted Clyde standing not far away. He was waiting for her at the manor gate. Sarah had barely taken a few steps when Clyde strode over, saying he wanted to take her out to eat. Sarah took 2 steps back and said firmly, "I already have plans," but Clyde still held on to Sarah. Sarah felt annoyed by the entanglement and was just thinking about how to break free when she saw Jezima walking towards her. Instinctively, Sarah looked at Jezima. He shouted loudly, "Sarah!" At this moment, Clyde was still talking, completely ignoring the situation here, gripping tightly with his hands, his words urgent. "Sarah, let's go eat and talk everything out." "Okay." Extremely impatiently, he pulled Sarah and shielded her behind him. Meanwhile, the tall Jezima stood coldly to the side, his towering figure quite imposing, his eyes seemingly piercing through Clyde. "I've never seen such a rude man before." As Jezima said this, he stepped in front of Sarah. Clyde looked up at Jezima, his demeanor faltering for a moment, but he still responded, "I'm her husband. I want to talk to her. This is our family matter. Please step aside." However, Jezima turned her head and glanced at Sarah, seeing her shake her head at her, and immediately understood. Jezima directly reached out, placing her hand on Clyde's shoulder, her eyes full of provocation. "Ex-husband's brother, right? I hope you recognize your position. Sarah doesn't want to see you at all, yet you shamelessly persist. Aren't you embarrassed?" Jezima's harsh words left Clyde pale-faced. Clyde, momentarily at a loss for a retort, could only call for Sarah, but Sarah paid no heed and was promptly pulled away into the distance. Leaning close to Sarah's ear, she said with a smile, "Let the men sort out their own affairs. Now it's time for us ladies to go eat together." Sarah hesitated for a moment, wanting to look back, but she tightened her grip and said, "If even he can't handle this, then he's not worthy of pursuing you." That slender little expression made Sarah unable to hold back a laugh, instantly dispelling the gloom in her heart. "Who exactly are you? Why are you interfering in our affairs?" Clyde initially wanted to chase after her, but was stopped by Jezima. And now he's glaring at Jezima in anger. But Jezima calmly patted Clyde's shoulder, his face completely unperturbed. "I am Sarah's suitor. You'd better go home now. She's mine." Clyde didn't expect to receive such a response and immediately became serious, scrutinizing the foreign man before him. Judging by his attire and stature, this foreign man had an outstanding appearance, excellent body proportions, and subtly visible muscles, clearly not some weakling who'd be easy to deal with. "Sarah won't like you," Clyde declared resolutely, thinking to himself that Sarah would only ever like someone like him. "Oh, could it be that she doesn't like someone as handsome as me, but prefers an uncle like you?" Clyde widened his eyes involuntarily and exclaimed in disbelief, "Uncle?" Although he was indeed much older than the foreign man before him, even 10 years older than Sarah, Clyde prided himself on his good maintenance, always keeping himself impeccably groomed every day. "That's the charm of a mature man. What would a kid like you know? Sarah likes me just the way I am." Jezima, however, completely ignored him and pushed him out of the winery, clapping her hands. Her attendants immediately followed Jezima's orders, hoisting Clyde up and tossing him out the door. "Come back again, and I'll throw you out once more. This is my home, and it's also Sarah's." With those words, the winery gate slammed shut. Clyde found himself completely shut out. He pounded frantically on the door outside, but there was no response at all. Clyde had no choice but to kick the door before leaving. Meanwhile, Jezima had already arrived at the restaurant in style with his convertible, the moment his tall figure appeared. Sarah looked at him with concern. "Jezima can handle this matter just fine." Noticing Sarah's worried gaze, Jezima sat directly on the stool beside her. His face was all smiles, and his eyes stared unwaveringly at Sarah. "Solving troubles for the one you love is what a qualified pursuer should do." Hearing such sweet words from a handsome face so close made Sarah flush with warmth. Her heart was pounding violently, and she instinctively avoided looking at Jezima any longer. Jezima, however, continued to gaze at Sarah with great interest. He adored the Sarah before him too much. A pair of burning eyes kept staring at Sarah, which eventually made her laugh out loud. It seems Jezima really likes you a lot. From the moment before entering until now, her eyes haven't left you. Didn't even greet her own sister. Sarah flustered, didn't know how to respond for a moment, and could only frantically eat the food in her bowl. Meanwhile, Jezima immediately gave a warning look, signaling her to stop talking, teasingly watching the two, with a spoon in his mouth, laughing heartily. After the gathering, using the excuse of attending a party, Jezima naturally offered to take Sarah home in the car. Jezima even sang for Sarah, his voice uniquely clear and bright, with a lazy and comfortable pronunciation, making Sarah unconsciously hum along. Jezima also kept recommending great songs, each with a pleasant and soothing melody. And they chatted about recent events amidst these wonderful tunes. Sarah found every topic she brought up met with an incredibly amusing reaction from Jezima, who always approached things from angles Sarah had never considered. When she mentioned the winery's current lack of a suitable ambassador, Jezima would say she was the perfect candidate. When she talked about how her landlady's flowers had been thriving lately and her dilemma over which blooms to buy that were easy to care for, Jezima would reassure her not to worry. Any flower, if tended to earnestly, would eventually become as beautiful as she was. Every word was an affirmation and compliment to Sarah, yet his gaze was sincere, and he spoke these words without a hint of jest. It was an extremely serious tone that caused Sarah to be unconsciously drawn to his profound gaze whenever she made eye contact with Jezima, and deeply captivated, her face flushed with a rosy hue. They chatted as they parked the car some distance from Sarah's home, stepping out effortlessly and walking side by side with laughter. Under the orange glow of the streetlights, their figures drew close, engaged in pleasant conversation, frequently exchanging glances, while Sarah's face wore a faint smile, her eyes often drifting unconsciously toward Jezima. Watching all this from the shadows, Clyde felt a bitter pang of jealousy, his fists clenched tightly. Clyde stepped forward and blocked Sarah's path. Jezima was caught off guard. Seeing Clyde approach again, she immediately moved to shield Sarah, but was stopped by Sarah herself. She held Jezima's arm and said softly, "This can't go on like this, let me handle it." "Okay," Jezima nodded, but still insisted on waiting outside for her. Sarah felt a surge of warmth in her heart, which gave her even more courage to face what was coming. She looked directly at Clyde, her tone firm. "Let's have a proper talk." Clyde followed Sarah into Sarah's cottage. After finding a seat by the window, Sarah subconsciously glanced outside at Jezima, who waved back at Sarah. Witnessing this, Clyde felt increasingly unsettled. "I thought you'd already gotten together with Auntie long ago." Sarah got straight to the point and then continued, "Since I'm Auntie's substitute, and you love her enough to donate a kidney for her, why aren't you together?" The casual words made Clyde somewhat embarrassed, and he didn't know how to respond for a moment. Sarah stood up to pour him a glass of water, but her eyes drifted to Jezima outside the window, who was staring at the soil on the ground, seemingly lost in thought. He had actually taken to heart every word she had just said. Clyde made up his mind and spoke sincerely. "Sarah, I'm sorry, but I truly do like you. After you left, no matter what I did, my heart felt empty. I've seen my heart clearly now, and it's you I love." Sarah seemed taken aback by his words, eyeing him suspiciously without speaking, hesitating. Clyde glanced at Jezima outside and quickly said, "I hope you can give me a chance. I'll start pursuing you all over again. And I promise to treat you well from now on. These past 2 years, we've been doing really well, haven't we?" Sarah shook her head, took a sip of water from her glass, and said, "It's too late. I've completely fallen out of love with you. Today, I just wanted to put an end to this and make you give up." "Clyde, can you leave Australia for good and completely exit my life? Your presence is a huge burden to me now." Clyde refused to give up and immediately pointed at Jezima outside the window, exclaiming loudly, "Is it because of this foreigner that you don't want to be with me anymore?" Sarah darkened her expression and sneered, "You're overthinking it, even without him. I wouldn't go back to you, but he is really nice. I enjoy being with him and want to give it a try with him." Clyde paled, watching as Sarah gazed longingly at Jezima outside, the bitterness seeming to sink deep into his stomach along with the tea. He knew there was no chance left for him. Eyes never lie. From start to finish, Sarah only looked at him with disgust and mockery, and at this moment, her eyes held only Jezima. Clyde wanted to struggle a bit more, but he couldn't think of any reason to keep Sarah. Sarah, seeing he still wanted to say more, she directly dialed Jezima's number, her voice calm. "Jezima, I've said all there is to say. You can come in now, this is outright expulsion. Clyde felt the last bit of warmth in his heart extinguished, and his pride left him unable to utter another word. He stormed out the door, drove straight back to the hotel, hastily packed all his luggage, and rushed to the airport. Clyde was utterly despondent while waiting at the airport. He knew all too well that there was no possibility left between him and Sarah, and it was all his own doing. The thought of Sarah and Jeremiah possibly being all lovey-dovey at that very moment weighed on his heart like a heavy stone, making it hard to breathe. Clyde decided to leave everything behind and return to his home country. Clyde started working overtime late into the night after returning to his home country. He was always the first to arrive at work and the last to leave. Once back home, he would drown himself in alcohol, drinking until completely wasted, attempting to numb his pain with liquor every morning. His assistant had to come to Clyde's house to clean up and deal with the mess left behind every day. Seeing Clyde passed out drunk on the sofa, incessantly murmuring Sarah's name, his assistant could only sigh. Had I known this would happen, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. Serves me right. At this moment, Sarah stood amidst a shower of petals, wearing a long white and blue floral dress, her head slightly bowed as Jezima before her carefully placed an exquisitely crafted lily hair ornament in her hair, under the sunlight. Jezima confessed to Sarah once again, "The moment I saw you, I knew you were the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen, and that will never change. I really like you a lot. Can we take our relationship further and become lovers, Sarah?" Sarah had heard his confessions many times before, and she could feel the sincerity in each one. Through their time together these days, she had actually already wanted to nod in agreement. Under the warm sunlight, Sarah's lily crown bloomed with dazzling radiance. Warmth enveloping her, she took Jezima's hand and nodded shyly. The landlady's family and everyone cheered excitedly, surrounding Jezima and Sarah, singing joyfully. Meanwhile, Jezima had already embraced Sarah. Pink petals were falling endlessly from the sky, heralding a new chapter in life for the new couple. Sarah just felt so grateful that she hadn't lost the courage to start over. 3 years passed in a flash, and the vineyard released a new red wine developed with the participation of Sarah, named Rebirth. The new product sold out immediately upon release, and the buyer was none other than Clyde. He had been keeping an eye on the news and placed an order for all the wine in one go. When the red wine arrived, Clyde opened a bottle right away, drinking while reminiscing about Sarah. He recalled every smile and frown of Sarah in this home. Remembered Sarah walking up to him with her pregnant belly. Clyde kept reminiscing, alternating between tears and laughter, pouring bottle after bottle of red wine down his throat. Had there been no lies back then? Would they now be holding their adorable child in this silent home, sharing a glass of rich, delicious red wine together? Would they, perhaps, not be like this now? Clyde, as he thought this, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his abdomen, his face turned pale, and he vomited a mouthful of dark red blood. In an instant, he closed his eyes and fell into unconsciousness. It wasn't until the assistant entered the room that he discovered the unconscious Clyde. He hurriedly sent Clyde to the hospital. However, the doctor diagnosed and informed the assistant that Clyde was already in the late stages of liver cancer. At this moment, Jezima was holding Sarah, looking quite displeased as he complained, "That scheming man actually bought up all your red wine. I'm so angry I could fly over and punch him right now." Sarah was about to comfort him with a smile when she saw Jezima suddenly start boasting, his expression turning proud and animated. "Luckily, I kept that special bottle we brewed together, the only one like it in the whole world. No matter how much he drinks, nothing can compare to this bottle." Sarah smiled helplessly and pushed the clingy guy away, thinking to herself how this person had become increasingly childish after falling in love. But the smile on her face lingered like ripples on a lake as she gazed at Jezima before her. Before evening even arrived, Jezima had already left early for work, which made Sarah, who had finally gotten a day off and was looking forward to watching TV with Jezima, quite unhappy. But just as dinner time approached, Jezima returned, saying he would take her out to eat and asked her to dress up a little. He even bought her a beautiful pink and white princess dress and braided her hair. Sarah thought she was going to meet some important big shot and was quite nervous, but Jezima kept smiling, deliberately mysterious, just refusing to tell Sarah. It wasn't until she arrived at the venue Sarah realized it was actually her own home, and to think Jezima actually said it was right. He led Sarah into the house. Sarah then realized the entire house was filled with people, the romantic decorations, ambient lights everywhere, colorful lanterns, and a photo-covered wall left her utterly delighted. Most importantly, The landlady's family and all their colleagues were there. Sarah, for this moment, I haven't slept well for days. You're still laughing at me. Then, Jezima went down on one knee directly, pulling out a ring box from his white suit. The ring box opened to reveal a massive diamond, with lily patterns adorning its surroundings. Sarah, will you marry me? Amid the cheers of the crowd, Sarah felt as if she were floating on cloud nine. Overwhelmed with joy, she accepted the ring, shedding tears of happiness amidst the cheers of the crowd, and said yes to Jezima. Clyde's diagnosis of liver cancer quickly became public knowledge. Sylvia hurried back from Paris, and upon seeing the unconscious Clyde still murmuring Sarah's name, she instantly understood everything. She hurriedly called Sarah on the phone. Clyde is now in the late stages of liver cancer with not much time left. He keeps talking about you these days. Could you come back to the country, at the very least, accompany him through his final journey in life, okay? Sarah was somewhat shocked upon hearing these words, but more than anything, she felt a deep melancholy, as if transported to another lifetime. She looked at the Jezima family beside her, who were happily selecting wedding dresses for her, and in her heart, she already had the answer. Sarah gripped her phone and resolutely responded, I won't go back. Sylvia didn't expect Sarah to be so resolute, she said in confusion. How could you become so cold and heartless, after all? You two were once husband and wife. He became like this for your sake, didn't he? Sarah hung up the phone directly, not wanting to waste any more time with Sylvia. Jezima noticed Sarah's mood and took Sarah's hand, who was on the phone. Did something happen? Sarah returned Jezima's handshake, shaking her head and saying, someone unimportant, come here, both of you, and see which one looks better. Interrupting their conversation, she walked over holding a necklace in her hand. I think mine looks better. What do you all think? This one is petite and delicate. The one Mom picked is too old-fashioned. Sarah smiled as she pulled Jezima forward. Let me take a look. Meanwhile, Clyde was struggling to breathe, clearly aware that he was about to die. Surrounded by the endless sound of crying, in his blurry vision, he could only see his assistant looking dejected and Sylvia, who was currently sobbing uncontrollably. In the haze, his eyes closed once more. Clyde saw that he hadn't divorced Sarah. Sarah was still complaining about him not far away. Why didn't you put the slippers away properly? I'm already so uncomfortable, and now I have to arrange your slippers for you too. He smiled and walked over, neatly arranging the shoes in front of him, then turned to hold Sarah, guiding her to sit on the sofa. Tilting his head, he listened carefully to the movements inside Sarah's belly. Clyde's eyes were filled with wonder. The rhythmic thumping sound seeming to echo right beside his ears, he looked at Sarah with pure happiness. Later, Clyde waited in the delivery room and welcomed an 8-pound little princess. Though wrinkled at birth, she soon began to smile. It was Sarah who gave her a beautiful name, Virginia. Virginia has grown a bit older and has already learned to walk. She loves wearing pink princess dresses, dislikes eating vegetables, and always holds Clyde's hand when walking. As she babbles her first words, the first person she calls is Clyde, but when her speech becomes clearest, she calls out Sarah. Every weekend, the family of 3 takes walks together in the square downstairs, and with their help, Virginia has even learned to ride a bicycle. Passers-by would all praise Virginia for being adorable, especially like Sarah, and say she would grow up to be a little beauty, but Virginia would hold Clyde's hand and say, my dad is very handsome too. Under the setting sun, they were happy and content, walking slowly into the distance as the sun dipped lower. Clyde wore a faint smile at the corner of his mouth as his heart stopped, the fluctuating electrocardiogram finally flatlining into a straight line. Meanwhile, Sarah stood on the straight floral aisle of the church, dressed in a pristine white wedding gown, with the long train trailing behind her. She held a bouquet of white lilies, step by step approaching Jezima not far away. Outside the church, white doves soared, circling the building several times, their flapping wings creating a resonant sound like a musical movement. Showering the newlyweds with blessings of joy, Sarah placed her hand in the man's before her, certain that the days ahead would be filled with happiness. From now on, I only wish to hold your hand and watch the clouds drift by together. The end.